Hello, everyone. I am really excited. We have with us today Samyr Qureshi, who is the co founder and CEO of Knack. This is a really cool innovation for improving student experiences on campus at universities. So stick around. You want to learn about this.
Welcome to the Your Mark on the World show with your champion of social good, Devin D. Thorpe.
This episode is made possible via the support of our sponsors, including Johnson & Johnson's Caring Crowd. Samyr, welcome to the show.
Hi, Devin. How are you?
Great, great. I really appreciate you taking the time to be with me today. I'm excited to learn more about Knack. I could have used a little bit of more knack when I was in college. So tell us about Knack. What is Knack?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me here. Knack is a platform that increases student success on college campuses around outcomes such as academic improvement, student employment, as well as workforce readiness. And essentially what we do is we provide a platform to universities that allows them to onboard their high-achieving students, so students that have typically done well in their courses and in topics, to become peer leaders on campus, tutors, mentors, coaches, advisors, and they become available on our mobile platform, mobile first platform, that then students who are needed help in those sorts of courses or topics can book them for. Those sessions typically take place in person and on campus, though we do have an online component as well if they choose that modality. And then our technology tracks all the data and the student performance, the tutor performance, feeds that right back to the institution to help track student retention and student outcomes.
That's fascinating. Now, are the students who are helping, mentoring, guiding, and tutoring, are they doing this as a community service or are they compensated?
Yeah, great question. So a little bit of both. Right now, about 20% of our tutor base is completely free, and that's because they're intrinsically motivated to help somebody. There's a lot of not just research that proves tutoring is beneficial from a skills development standpoint, but also just personally, it's very satisfying to a lot of folks, right? And a lot of students find it to be a good way of relearning, right? They say to teach is to learn twice. So there's that aspect. But then, of course, there's the aspect of being able to make a little bit of money. So typically, tutors will set their own rate, but we have an average of under $20 an hour, which is really affordable when you think about in-person course-specific help, meaning that tutor actually took that course at the same institution before and did well. And then, again, the opportunity is really in the hands of the tutor to select that rate. But most tutors are really kind of very modest in their hourly rate, and everything is prorated and billed to the minute. So for instance, if I book you for an hour session, but we only meet up for 40 minutes, I'm only going to pay that accordingly based on your hourly rate through our system.
That's very cool. So this is, to use a clumsy metaphor, it's sort of the Uber for tutoring.
I guess you could say that. It's funny, we used a lot of that sort of verbiage in the beginning. But then we realized, Uber is very much kind of transactional, right? Where I get help, right? I book my car, I get my ride, and I never see that person again. With us, it's almost more of a personal relationship you're cultivating with an individual. So we like to think it's a little bit more personal than that. That at the end of the day, we are a marketplace. We're somewhat on demand, and it's mobile first. So there are a lot of elements that are kind of shared there.
Yeah. What was really the goal when you sat down and started working on this? What was the problem you wanted to solve? Did I lose you, Samyr? Oh no.
Are you there?
Yeah, looks like I lost you there for a second, Samyr. So what was the problem you wanted to solve when you first sat down to work on this?
Yeah. So, I think access of academic help in any course that you really need help in right now, typically universities and students are really only able to provide or find help in courses that are, the ones you generally think of, the calculuses, the chemistries, and what have you. And typically universities are really only able to cover the lower level courses, the ones that you call them the weed out courses, the ones where there's 800,000 students in a big state institution, which is great because that's where a lot of the need is, right? But when you start to get into your upper level courses, we have tutors tutoring advanced agricultural business economics, right? A typical economics tutor is not going to necessarily be able to help you in the same regard, nor is it relevant anymore. So we really came in to help fill those long tail of courses as well as other kind of soft skill developmental courses that students don't really have a way of taking, right? Resume editing, mentorship, first year success coaching, almost being a motivator on top of being a tutor, right? And so we try to kind of marry this experience with sort of having someone that motivates and encourages you and leads you through your class rather than kind of just tells you the material, if you will. So there's really this desire to solve the problem of access and affordability to help no matter what course you're in. And being able to find someone that's the most relevant, someone that's been in your shoes before, someone that's sat there, has that empathy, and someone who's potentially your age so that you could end up being good friends with. So kind of forging these collaborative collisions that are already happening on a campus, but formalizing them through a process that then captures data that's really important for the institution to make better decisions.
Does the institution, the university, have to be involved in this transaction, or to what extent are they involved on the platform today?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we actually started the business direct to consumer, direct to students. So we'd go out there, educate the high achieving students on the value and the benefits, both intrinsically, again, as that goodness of heart, but also the extrinsic motivation to make a little bit of money flexibly. So we did that going direct to student, and we did really well. We ended up scaling the business about 50 campuses. We did it completely remote, right? So we never step foot on most of those campuses. We just kind of had our tactics of finding these students and activating them, if you will. But what we realized was at the end of the day, we had more and more students on the receiving end that didn't necessarily want to continue to pay for this, because when you come to tutoring, it's not necessarily the most exciting thing. It's not the first thing you think about spending your money on. And so, we saw that side of the business kind of, difficult because it's not just a marketing problem, but it's also the issue of I can't necessarily afford this with my $300 to $500 allowance I get, right? So how do we drive the cost down? But then on the tutor side, one thing that was really interesting that we noticed were that our tutors were going off to really incredible companies, the Googles, the Amazons, the Spotifys of the world. Go figure, right? They're high achieving students. They've done well. They're continuing to hone those skills as they meet up with these other students that they're instructing. So we had this interesting kind of a view on our business, and we said we've got two sides here, and we're trying to drive costs down, try to drive accessibility, higher, and we've got really interesting groups of students on the platform. So what we started to do was we approached some of these companies and we said, would you like to support these students and have access to potentially hiring them by basically supporting their learning and earning, we called it. And so we had companies like PwC that came in and said, sure, we'll cover the cost of all the accounting tutoring by backing the top tutors as basically PwC branded tutors to go out and help other students and enrich that experience for them to make a better decision on whether or not they are a good hire, right? Those soft skills are being built. For the student, what that does is it offsets the cost. So universities got really excited about this. And so we had the opportunity to work with some of the largest institutions in the country, University of Central Florida, which is not too far down the street here from us, and then Arizona State University, which is one of the largest institutions in the world. So ASU took an equity stake in our business, and they said, we think there's an opportunity for you to work directly with institutions, and we want to be kind of your first customer and back you. So now we've really kind of taken a more B2B to C approach, where we work with the institution directly because our incentives are the same. We want students to succeed. We want students to do well. And ultimately, they get to now look at data that they previously never had. So we kind of bring this unveiled layer of student learning data, student improvement, student development. So it started direct to consumer, and now we're actually really focusing on driving institutional partnerships. But to answer your question in short, we don't need the blessing of the campus. We typically start direct to consumer, and then we take that groundswell activity and go to the institution and say, we're doing great things, let's talk.
Yeah. So in some cases now the university is subsidizing or paying for all of the tutoring for some of the students. Is that right?
That's right. And it's typically done departmentally. So college or business will cover the cost of tutoring. By nature of them covering the cost of tutoring, they're actually putting money back into the pockets of their high achievers, right? So they're actually investing back into their campus, which I think is really, really cool. And so, that's exactly right. They'll back courses, they'll back tutors, they'll back departments. Some campuses are doing the whole campus, right? The whole end-to-end. Knack is the official go-to tutoring platform.
But because of the way this is set up, in sort of a gig approach, the universities aren't onboarding dozens or hundreds of employees. You're managing a pool of independent contractors instead. So it really simplifies things for the university. Am I thinking about that right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, it's really an operational shift, right? We're moving right now from an infrastructure-based economy to a service-based economy, right? Where decentralization and distributed natures of the workforce is actually what's starting to happen, right? The look and feel of a traditional college student's even changing. And so I think by nature of that, universities have to become innovators and have to think outside the box if they want to stay relevant and if they want to support students end to end. And so we've been really lucky to work with a really nice handful of institutions that believe that that's an important facet of the student experience.
Fascinating. Well, Samyr, what are you most proud of having accomplished?
Um, I think it's being able to build a team that's really excited about this and being able to wake up every day and put this as a number one priority, sacrificing a typical salary at a big company or sacrificing having that true kind of safety blanket, if you will, right? Working at a startup sounds very appealing and sounds very fun, and it is. But there are a lot of low points that a lot of folks hit, and those usually aren't very much spotlighted. And so I think we've done a lot by being able to keep our team together, not just keep them together, grow them, both internally and the people that they become, but even more so adding folks to the team that buy into this mission. And so, we've been fortunate enough to raise a little over $2 million in venture capital funding. We've been able to work, as I'd mentioned, on over 50 campuses. So I think we've accomplished a lot in the last 2 years. And I think having none of us are all first-time founders. We've never started a company in the past. And we're fairly young. And so I think, that young mentality is good, but it's also important to have that always learning mentality, right? So that's a big mantra we live by here. So it's really been kind of the internal development of our team. Seeing our product out on 50 campuses has been incredible too.
Samyr, what is the most important lesson you've learned as you've been building this company?
I think it's truly persistence. Again, there have been moments where we didn't think the company was going to survive for a couple more months, and it's really tough when it's everything you've worked for the last 2 to 3 years, and not just physically of building a product, but also emotionally and really being passionate about the problem of helping students get help, because ultimately we're not just developing students in the classroom. We truly believe we're developing them for the workforce. And I think by nature of being an integral part of a student's experience on a campus, it's hard to think sometimes that someone doesn't want to buy the product, or someone doesn't want to invest, or a media outlet doesn't want to write about us, right? And I think over time, resilience just starts to build up, and that'll only happen if you have a team. And it's really indicative of our whole mission, right? Of having peers around you that can support you. And I think that's what we've been able to do, is we've been able to mobilize this team and be agile and understand, okay, if direct-to-consumer doesn't make sense, what does make sense, right? And so I would say persistence and agility. And I think those two things can come a lot from resilience, which just comes from understanding that, this is the game of life, and that, everything is truly a learning opportunity, as elementary as that would sound.
What motivated you to get started with this?
So kind of to make a long story short, I'm a first generation immigrant, moved to the United States with my mom when I was 7, and that was truly to get an education, right? My mom came here, and what I was told was, this is America. It's the greatest country in the world. If you work hard here, if you get an education, you can truly accomplish whatever you want. And I think at a very young age, my mom actually had me tested for gifted, and they came back and told me, he's definitely not gifted. He's actually on a poor academic track, and he needs to be on medication, and he needs all these sorts of intervention services. And, my mom never told me that until much later, and instead became my first tutor, and really instilled academic, persistence in me, and really helped me understand that, maybe I didn't learn in a traditional environment, but maybe there was a way for me to learn and to actually exceed. And so I ended up doing really well, and I subsequently became a tutor. And I really enjoyed, again, that intrinsic feeling of helping someone. It started out as a volunteer job at a library, then I started getting paid. And so it was a really great job because it was also entrepreneurial, right? I could work when I wanted. I could manage my own clients. I got to, again, instill hope and education in someone. So I think falling in love with that, but then I kind of fell out of touch with it when I started to get into, my latter years of college and understanding where I wanted to go. So I was lucky enough to work at Apple. And then I went to work on a company called Gartner, which is the largest IT research and advisory firm. Did very well there in sales, but I just didn't want to be kind of a bigger part of it, or a smaller part of a bigger machine. So I wanted to be at a place where if I didn't show up to work, something wasn't going to work right. And so again, thinking back, education was a recurring theme. I had seen my friends struggle in college, and we had kept seeing this problem over and over, whereas most education companies are focused on K-12. We wanted to focus on college students, and the evolution of what was happening with Uber and Airbnb and marketplaces and the gig economy was so interesting that I thought we could really apply a different model and take this business in a different direction.
Samyr, what is your superpower?
If I could have one? Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm asking what makes you amazing?
Yeah, I don't wake up every day thinking I'm an amazing person, and I would argue that could be detrimental to some people's ego. But I would say, I think it's just passion. I think it's waking up every day and remembering that, despite people saying no, despite things not going out according to plan, there's a purpose here, right? And so I think remembering that this is a mission-driven organization and exfoliating that out is what I hope to do well. And I hope that that's something that, I could be remembered as having a mark on the world, and, if you will, within education and higher education, because I think higher education is typically, you think professors and you think old and Ivy and, which is beautiful, and it's a big piece of what we need. But I also think there needs to be more energy, and there needs to be an understanding that, again, the student's changing. And I think by bringing this different perspective, we're able to impact more people.
That's terrific. Well, Samyr, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I know you're busy running a company, but before you go, would you take just a minute to tell people how they can learn more about Knack and how they can connect with you personally?
Yeah, absolutely. So joinknack.com, joinknack.com is our website. Personally, I'm on Twitter. It's at SAMYR, my first name, and then ICLE. And LinkedIn as well. So if they search my name on LinkedIn or even Google, those sorts of outlets should definitely pop up. But joinknack.com, and our handles across Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook is at joinknack as well.
Fantastic. Well, Samyr, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today. We wish you every success in improving education across the country and around the world.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Devin.
All righty. Let's do some good.
At Caring Crowd, we believe everyone has the power to make a difference. Through our crowdfunding platform for community health, we empower passionate people to drive real change. Whether you work for a nonprofit organization, volunteer, or want to get involved for the first time, you can post a campaign on Caring Crowd. Join us, because caring is where change begins.
Thank you for listening. Devin Thorpe's mission is to end extreme poverty, improve global health, and mitigate climate change before 2045 by finding and sharing the stories of those who are doing the most good. You can join with other listeners to accelerate Devin's mission by visiting helpdevin.org right now.